Hey gang, this is Mike with my Real Estate Dojo, and today's lesson is about the question one of my friends on YouTube subscribers asked me. He said, Mike, how do you determine what equity is, or how much is equity? So let's go ahead and dive and get started. Now, before I explain how do you determine how much equity a seller has, I want to make sure I define what equity is. Equity means that when a seller has a loan or a mortgage on their property, let's say the fair market value. What fair market value means is what the home will sell for to a retail buyer. So the fair market value is what the home will sell for to a retail buyer, and let's say in this example, the fair market value is $100,000. The seller over here, they have a mortgage with Bank of America and they owe $60,000 to the bank. So equity is the difference between what the fair market value is, which is 100, and whatever the seller's debt is. When you subtract the 100 minus the 60, the remaining is $40,000. That is called equity. That's what goes into the seller's pocket after the seller pays off the bank loan, okay? So let me repeat this one more time. It's very important you understand this. The fair market value is the price that retail buyers, these are people that have like family and dogs and this is their dream home, that's what they're gonna pay for the home, okay? It's not what an investor like me and you're gonna pay for, okay? But it's the fair market value. Now, equity is whatever the fair market value is minus whatever the seller's debt balance is. Okay, 100 in this example, the fair market is 100, the seller's Bank of America loan is 60. When you subtract it, you have 40. Okay, so that's $40,000. But stop. Okay, it's very important you understand this. When you talk to a seller, their true equity is not 40,000. And the reason is, and pay attention, it's so important that you should be able to explain to the seller, but more importantly, you understand for yourself, is that the true equity is the $40,000 that the seller gets minus the cost of selling their home. Okay, so it's very, very important you understand that. So the seller gets 40, but more likely they're gonna hire a realtor, since 97% of all transactions in America happen with a realtor. This is according to Texas Real Estate Commission, that 40 needs to be subtracted from the closing cost. Now, I have a video that talks about all the closing costs, but let me just do a quick summary. The closing costs are going to be normally 6% realtor commissions. You got roughly about 3% closing from escrow, title policy, etc. Then you have roughly about 1 to 2% in repairs after the inspection that comes in that the seller's going to want to renegotiate. So if you usually rough that up quickly, just do a quick estimate, there's a plus or minus, but it's roughly about 10% that the seller is going to have to pay to sell this property for him to be able to tap out this equity, okay? So let's go back to the equation. The home value is 100. The seller's loan bank is 60. What he owes to the bank, 100 minus 60 equals $40,000. So this $40,000 does not go into the seller's pocket if he wants to tap out that equity. What he needs to do is hire a realtor. That realtor is going to charge him 6% plus closing costs plus repair costs after inspection is another 10%. So out of that $100,000, 10% of 100, so 100, 10% is 10,000. So what's going to happen is the seller's true equity is $40,000 minus the 10,000 equals 30,000. So if the seller decides to sell, they're not going to get 40, they're going to get 30. Now pay attention, why is that important to you as a real estate investor? Because when you talk to a seller, your ability to explain to the seller that, hey, your equity and your true equity are two different things. Theoretically, you're going to get 40, but by the time you sell it and pay its title policy, all the paperwork, X, Y, and Z, you're only going to get 30. That way you're able to negotiate and get more money because you're able to explain to the seller his true equity compared to his equity, okay? Because that equity and true equity is two different things, because what really matters is how much money you put into your pocket. That's the key, okay? Not just gross, okay? Does that make sense? That's very important because, for example, I have a moving company, Dr. Move, and we gross $1 million, let's say, but that's all not in my pocket. You know, I gotta pay all these expenses, okay? So what we're looking for is profits, okay? Now, to recap, I just talked about what is equity, okay, which is the difference between the debt and the fair market value minus the selling price when you have to pay the realtors, title, policy, escrow, all that good stuff. And what is true equity. And why is it important for you guys to understand this concept so you're able to get the best deal when you're talking to a seller? Because you're going to talk to a lot of sellers and say, well, I have $40,000 with equity. Or you may talk to a seller that have marginal equity. What I mean by that is their home is worth 100 and they owe 90, or they owe 95, and they think, oh man, I'm going to make $15,000 because, you know, 15% of 100,000 is 15,000. So they're thinking, oh, I'm going to make $15,000. And the truth is, no, sir. By the time you pay all your closing costs, you're not going to make any money. You're going to maybe make, if you're lucky, a couple of grand. But if you're not lucky, you're going to have to bring a couple of grand to closing, or you may just break even. So when you talk to a seller that has marginal equity or no equity, it's very important that you're able to explain this idea that I just explained to you, because these are great subject twos. I mean, you really, when you meet a seller that have 10% equity or 12% equity or 15% equity, that's really no money, man. Because by the time they pay all the closing costs of 10%, they're all wiped out, okay? So in these situations, these are great subject to deals where you can just put a couple of grand into the seller's pocket, pay for their moves. If guys, you're in Dallas-Fort Worth area, hit up Dr. Move. We'll hook you up if you're an investor. But pay for their move and then pay for their closing costs, and just step in the seller's shoes, take over the payment. You don't have to get a new loan. There's a non-recourse loan in there, and you're having significant lower interest rate if you went to the bank and got a commercial loan to buy a real estate property, because the seller got it as he lived in the property, and you're buying it as commercial, so the interest rate is significantly different. I think that covers the whole aspect about what is equity and how to determine equity. And basically the way you determine equity is figure out what the fair market value is, whatever the debt is, subtract the cost of selling, and that's a true equity. I hope I answered your question. I really appreciate you watching and asking me any questions. If you guys like this video, please like, please share, please comment. Go out there and hustle and bustle and fucking ace it. See you later.